My favorite time of the year where I get to look like a complete idiot because none of my predictions are right when doing a playoff prediction bracket. But regardless of the point, we're going to be predicting who we think is going to be the Super Bowl winner for the NFL 2024, technically 2025 playoff season. We're going to be going left to right in this one, and I gotta say, this year more than any other year, I really like the wild card matchups. I think even some of the 2 seed versus 7 seed Bills versus Broncos, I like that much matchup a lot. Ironically enough, though, as a Packers fan, I do think that Eagles and Packers game is going to be probably the worst of the entire weekend. I'll get more into that when we get to it, but left to right is how we're going to start this thing, starting off with the AFC. We have the Texans and the Chargers, a matchup that, just like their seeding suggests, is actually a very close one. The problem is the Texans, in my opinion, as of late, have definitely not even in my opinion, they just looked worse. Their offense in general hasn't been what we expected. We're like, hey, they got Stephon Diggs now. They got Joe Mixon. Their offense looked great before those guys. Well, then some injuries happened, and in general, CJ Stroud definitely had a little bit of a slump. They do get Nico Collins back. He's been slowly worked in. It hasn't looked the best, but obviously when he's on his best, he's one of the best wide receivers in the entire league. Joe Mixon is obviously a solid running back. The one thing I do worry about is the Texans offensive line versus the Chargers pass rush. Both teams on paper, offensively, points per game, all the stats, they do look equal. Like I said, though, I think the Chargers maybe are a bit hotter than the Texans have been for sure, but also the pass rush. I do think the Chargers pass rush is going to be a little more successful against the Texans O-line versus the vice versa in this one. I really just think the lack of weapons for Houston because of the injuries is probably going to be just a little too much. Of course, on the Chargers side, you don't have the household names just yet, but Quentin Johnston, I know it's against the Raiders, but he did have a kind of coming out party a little bit. He had a pretty damn good game. And then McConkey has just been super good for him this year. I think that, you go QB to QB. I like Herbert a little bit more than CJ Stroud as well. And like I said, I think the big thing in this one, besides the pass rush difference, not that Houston isn't good, I just think that the Chargers offensive line is going to be a bit better than Houston's offensive line is going to be at protecting their quarterback. But I think it's the weapons. I think the Houston Texans and their injuries at wide receiver are going to be too much. I think even the Chargers get Josh Palmer back, or he's going to be playing more. I'm not even 100% sure, but I do have the Chargers winning this one 24-20. Any way I could see this happening, though, I could see this easily being a Texans win as well. But if I'm not mistaken, I think the Texans are even considered underdogs in this one while being at home. So it kind of seems like that is the betting odds in general. We now move on to the Ravens versus the Steelers. And because it's a divisional matchup, we're always going to say that any given Sunday exists. And especially, like I said, those divisional matchups, they get absolutely rowdy. They get wild. However, if you're a betting man, I think you have no choice but to go Ravens. I think their offense has looked way too deadly. And just like the Steelers, I think that the Ravens defense hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been up to standards, sort of, but I don't think I've remembered a time where the Ravens and Steelers weren't at least considered a good defense. Maybe not elite like we're used to, but I think they're always going to be a good defense team. That's just their identities in their history. Ravens defense is obviously pretty damn good, but their pass defense is a little suspect. The Steelers, pretty good at defending against the run. They did stop Henry the first time they played. Second time, however, they got absolutely trampled on. And once again, the Ravens, they're pretty much always the best run team in the league year in and year out. And I think they're just going to have another day against the Steelers. The Steelers' offense is still just kind of like shaky. They've lost 4 games in a row. George Pickens is still kind of battling an injury. I just really don't like the matchup for the Steelers. Like I said, though, any given Sunday, so the Steelers fans who travel well might be traveling well to this video. Don't kill me, because like I said, about to talk about the Packers soon, and it's going to be way worse than that. My own team, my own favorite team, I just think that the Steelers are going up against just too strong of a team. The Ravens, I mean, they could even be the pick to win it all. So, unfortunately, I'm going to give it to the Ravens. I'm going to give them 27-17 over the Steelers. We now talk about the Bills and the Broncos, and I think the only thing you can really say about this, or the first thing you need to say at least, is, wow, Josh freaking Allen. Don't get me wrong, they do have talent on their team, especially on the defensive side of the ball, but if Josh Allen is off this team, and I know you can say that about a bunch of different quarterbacks, but if you switch Josh Allen and let's say Baker Mayfield, who's playing really well, Are the Bills in the playoffs? I can't say they are. I really can't. Josh Allen just carries the hell out of this entire team, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I just think it's unbelievable. Probably going to be winning MVP, or at least being the second place MVP guy. Obviously, the Broncos are a super good 7 seed. I mean, they're easily better than Green Bay by like a mile, in my opinion. The Broncos have been hot. Their offense has been solid. Their defense has been an unbelievable surprise. I know they got Sean Payton, and he's going to change that team around, and it's going to be unbelievable to see what they did when nobody gave them a chance, but I just can't believe this Broncos team, especially a guy like Nick Bonito. That pass rush has been unbelievable. The Bills, their offensive line hasn't been great, but when you got a guy like Josh Allen, the guy is basically unsackable. I think this is going to be a game where you're obviously going to be comparing the offenses. Both weapons, I don't know if they're really the best in the league. I think you're going QB versus QB, and while Bo Nix has been solid, I just think it's almost impossible to bet against Josh Allen. I'm going to be giving the Bills the win. I actually didn't have a score for this one. It's really tough because, like I said, the Broncos' defense is really good. Their pass defense is good. Their pass rush is good. Their run defense is solid. Even against quarterbacks, it's like middle of the pack. I just think that Josh Allen is just inevitable. But if there is a team, honestly, that could defeat them early, it would be the Broncos. Like Chargers, I would say probably not much of a chance. Steelers, zero chance almost. Sorry, Steelers fans, you're getting dogged on here a little bit. But yeah, I see a lot of weaknesses with Buffalo for sure. It's just Josh Allen. I don't know. I'm glazing the hell out of him here, but I just think he is the ultimate X factor here, and they're going to win. I don't know. I'll give them 27-20. I don't know. It's the Broncos have a chance, but it comes down to Josh Allen, and I think he's going to be too much to handle for most teams. We now move on to the NFC side, where you have the Rams and the Vikings, teams that have actually played each other earlier in the year, where the Rams won by 10, I believe, 30-20. But I think the Rams, another one of those teams, kind of similar to the Texans, where they haven't really played up to standard, especially as of late. And I think that the Vikings, when they're not playing elite teams like the Detroit Lions, really are an elite team themselves. Not to say that the Vikings couldn't beat the Lions if they end up having a face-off against each other again, which honestly, based on my projections, could happen soon. We'll see. I know, of course, Dan Campbell mentioned, seeing the Vikings in 2 weeks when they, obviously took care of business against them for that final game to decide the entire thing, the whole first seed division, everything. But I just think the Vikings, when they're on, and as long as they're not playing an elite team, they're usually on. The big question is, can Aaron Jones be healthy? The guy seems like he's injured all the time. As much as I loved him as a Packers fan, I could see the vision, I could see the direction that Green Bay was going with Jacobs. You're getting youth, you're getting lack of injury for the most part, and it's played out exactly like we thought. Aaron Jones looks great, but he's always injured. He just can't play a full season. He's not that long-term guy. Their run game could suffer from that. But when Aaron Jones is in, he is a way bigger threat through the air than anyone really in the league at the running back position. I know there's other guys that are very good. I just think Aaron Jones might be the best out of all of them right now. It's just he's not out there often. But when he is, that offense, when you got guys like Jefferson, Addison, even Hawkinson, who maybe is a bigger name than he is a talent at this rate, I just think it's really hard to defend against. The pass blocking of the Vikings, they're really good. Darnold gets so much time to throw, but like we've seen with the Lions, when they do provide some pressure, he does struggle to make reads. The Rams, they have firepower on offense. Even the running game looks great. Matthew Stafford, though, the inconsistencies are there. I know the pressure can be a problem with that offensive line, but the Vikings, when they did play against them, weren't really able to do much against Stafford. But yeah, Stafford, at times, he just doesn't look like his normal self. I just think the Rams, there's something going on there where they just don't look as good as they can. I know they're the 4th seed. I get it. I just think that there's been a lack of consistency from the Rams this year, and I think on paper, the Vikings, they just look like the better team. I'm not saying that they will win, but my prediction is going to be 27, a close 27-23, Vikings over the Rams. Now you have the Buccaneers and the Commanders, who on paper, this is another really, really close matchup like the Texans and Chargers, where they just look equal. They really look equal. The offensive successes, points per games, all that stuff, they look almost identical. Their defenses are similar to that, especially in the, once again, points per game situation. Both have really good weapons on the offensive side of the ball. Both have solid quarterbacks. I think you're going to just compare really who has the better situation, who is the better of the two quarterbacks right now. And I think that's going to be hard to beat the Buccaneers. They've been pretty solid this year. I know the Commanders, especially late, have also been really hot. I just think that it's going to be a close game where Tampa just has the slight edge on offense. I'm going to give it 30-27 Buccaneers over the Commanders. I don't really want to go even further into that because they're just so similar. There's really no point in kind of, going down the line and saying, okay, where is this team better than the other one? On paper, their numbers, they look damn near identical. It's actually kind of wild. But once again, I think Tampa's offense is just a little bit better than the Commanders. And then you have the Packers and the Eagles. Once again, the Packers, my favorite team. The things aren't going to be said that are going to be good. They're not going to be very good. Right now, I know you can argue, what team doesn't? But Green Bay, with their injuries right now, their pass game has been not as good as you would have expected. This is one of those teams where you look at their, oh, wow, do they maybe have one of the most underrated best wide receiver squads in the league? Sure, possibly. But how many more years are they going to get to actually prove that they're more than just potential, right? Jaden Reed has definitely proven to be one of those guys, but Romeo Doubs, too much inconsistency, some injuries in there. Watson, of course, another inconsistent guy, but always injured, of course, tore his ACL. He's out for the year. This is a completely different team, similar to when Green Bay had Marquez Valdez-Scantling. When they don't have that vertical threat guy out there, defenses just don't respect the deep ball, as they shouldn't, because Green Bay has no deep game. Really, even with Watson, to be honest, the deep ball is just not necessarily there. But without Watson, teams don't need to worry. There's nothing to worry about deep. You can get up close to the line. Green Bay wants to run the ball anyways, and they just become very one-dimensional, very short ball, and you can just put everything in front of you, really. And I think, obviously, with Watson being out, that is going to be the factor. It's going to be a key. Looking at defensive side of the ball, Jair has been injured like almost the entire year. I expect him not to play as well. It seems like his season's over. Jordan Love even came out of the game against Chicago in Week 18 with an injury. Probably will be good to go. Probably could have stayed in if it was a must-win and in situation, but still, it's something to note. Then you look on the other side where Philly is the complete opposite. They're basically injury-less for the most part. They're as healthy as they can really get as far as an NFL team can go. Their offense is one of the best in the league. They haven't passed the ball much because they don't need to. That offensive line has been great. Their run game with Saquon has been great. It started off that way against the Packers in Week 1 against the Packers in Brazil. There was obviously a lot of slipping. It affected Green Bay maybe a little bit more, but more on Jordan Love. So maybe there's something there. Maybe when you look at that game, Green Bay could have been a little bit better without the slippage. But at the same time, Philadelphia's defense was slipping more than Green Bay's defense. So you could also argue that there might have been less scoring from Green Bay. So I would almost call that slipping pretty much as you would expect, kind of a moot point. But I will say, like I said, Jordan Love affected a little bit more there. Not going to be slippery. In theory, I think it's going to be snowing on Saturday instead of Sunday. Could still affect the next day, which I would imagine only helps the run games, which, don't get me wrong, Green Bay is a good run team. Philadelphia is just simply better. On paper, Green Bay's defense doesn't look as good. They look better than they are, I should say. The names aren't really there, and it really does show when you watch the games. I know statistically it's going to look pretty good, but that's because of the easy schedule that Green Bay face. It is not a very good defense, in my opinion. Turnovers, takeaways have also masked some things. You're not going to see much of that against these playoff teams. These are teams that are going to protect the ball better, especially against an Eagles team that doesn't throw the ball much. I believe they are the 32nd passing attempt team, once again, because that run game is so good. Green Bay's run defense, don't let the numbers fool you there either. This is a team that has benefit from playing some bad offensive lines, some bad running games. The Bears, Swift, they limited him, but who hasn't? The Bears' offense has just not been good, especially on the ground. Green Bay against good run games, like the Eagles themselves, they get absolutely dominated points per game-wise. They're probably 27, 30-plus against elite teams. And, of course, you also have the lack of talent. Green Bay has no base pressure. Their cornerbacks are iffy, even with Jair, so without him, it's even worse. Safeties are really kind of carrying this thing a bit, especially with those takeaways, and I just don't see it. I think Green Bay's only chance to really win is blitzing. Philadelphia has too much talent to blitz against. They're just going to get open if you do that, and honestly, Philadelphia, unless they just have some mistakes, some monumental mistakes, takeaway/turnover-wise, this is going to be a pretty easy win, in my opinion. Philadelphia wins 34-21. as a Packer fan, obviously I'm going to be watching. Obviously I'm going to be rooting for my prediction to be wrong. But I do see Philadelphia likely taking the W. And here we go, back to the AFC side in the divisional round, the Ravens versus the Bills. Probably not going to go as in-depth with this one because, of course, we've kind of talked deep about all of these teams except for the 1 seeds. But at the end of the day, I think the Ravens have a little bit better of an offense around their quarterback, Lamar, who is very good, than the Bills, who have Josh Allen, who's very good. And I think the Ravens' defense is probably a little bit better, especially equipped to stop what the Bills want to do with Josh Allen kind of running around. So I'm going to say the Ravens are going to win 30-28, a super close game. It's hard because I think the Bills are a really good team. I just think they're a little too dependent on Josh Allen, and I think that's just going to be ultimately the kind of detriment. I know, the Ravens are too, but they do have a good run game without Lamar. They have a good team without Lamar, whereas Josh Allen, you take away him, and I don't know. I'm not saying that the Ravens would do well without Lamar Jackson, but there are some quarterbacks in there that maybe could get the job done just because they do have a pretty solid team. Zay Flowers obviously been really, really good this year. Mark Andrews definitely finished better than he started for the most part. There was talks about Isaiah Likely being better than him. I don't know if those conversations exist anymore. We now move on to the Chargers and the Chiefs. I think this is a pretty obvious Chiefs win. Their defense has been unbelievable this year. Their offense has been good, not as great as normal, but I think they still have, easily the firepower, the clutch gene, if you will, when need be to win that game. The Chargers, I think they are there. I think the Chargers could easily win this game because this is the most vulnerable, even though the Chiefs are so good record-wise that they've been in a while. At the same time, though, I feel like we said that last year, didn't we? And guess what happened? So while I could see a world where the Chargers do win, especially in a divisional rivalry matchup, I still would give the Chiefs the win. This will probably be a little bit of a higher scoring game, even with the Chiefs defense being so good and the Chargers defense being really good too, pass rush wise. If that pass rush could do its best ever, maybe they do give the Chiefs that run. But once again, if you're a betting man, I think Chiefs over the Chargers 34-30, a very high scoring game. Then we have the other side, I think is another situation of what have we seen this year? We have seen the Lions do well against everyone. Talking about Coach of the Year real quick, by the way, I get it. Speaking of the Vikings, you could easily give it to Kevin O'Connell. Who had the Vikings even close to as good as they are with the injuries at QB? No one. It was like, maybe McCarthy will play. Maybe he'll look good. Maybe they'll have like 7 wins, something like that. But they looked unbelievable this year. Still, even with Sean Payton, even with Mike Tomlin, it's gotta, with all those injuries, gotta go to Dan. It's gotta go to Dan Campbell, in my opinion. But for whatever reason, it feels like the team that is like very, very good at the top doesn't get Coach of the Year. It's like you need to be like a level or 2 below it. I don't know why, but if it's not Dan Campbell, I don't know who it is. Those injuries, the fact they look almost even better after injuries than before when they have a guy like Hutchinson not playing is kind of crazy to me. But yeah, I got to give it to the Lions versus the Vikings, especially with that last game with everything on the line, just as much as anything, really. I mean, more, I wouldn't say more important, but more like risk, if you will, where, you kind of have nothing to lose in that situation because losing isn't the end of the world in a way. It's weird. I can't really explain it. I don't know. I can't explain it. But for them to just dominate the Vikings like that, I just think that that's just too much to overlook. And while the Vikings have looked great, they haven't looked the best against elite teams. So got to give it to the Lions, even though I think the Vikings are really good and obviously could win that game. It's not like one of those situations where, even Green Bay, I do think, they could win against Philly, but I truly believe Philadelphia's going to win that game, whereas this kind of situation where I truly do believe the Lions could win or will win, but Minnesota's got a really good team as well, especially on offense. If they can figure it out. The problem is, they got locked up. The Lions locked them up, which, is just unbelievable to me. The pressure was crazy in that game, too. I just think if the Lions even play half as good as they did in that game in this divisional round, they easily take care of business again. We now have the Buccaneers and the Eagles. This is a game where I actually kind of like Tampa's offense versus Philly's defense, but I also think Philadelphia is going to run wild in that game. I know it's super boring to go top seed outside of the Bills. But I got to go Philly. Their team is so talented, and they finally seem to be putting it together as opposed to last year where they just completely fell apart at the end of the year. I just never have seen an implosion like that before, and it's just, I think Philadelphia is going to take care of business versus Tampa Bay there. Although there's been some injury concerns with Jalen Hurts. What happens if he does get banged up? Green Bay, they might not have always won their games this year, but it seems like they do kind of lay the boom. They do get teams injured. Not like they're trying to injure anyone, but it just seems like teams do come out of those games kind of banged up, just like them. Green Bay hurts themselves in the process, but we'll see what happens if Philadelphia is healthy. I like them against Tampa. Back to the left side, Ravens versus Chiefs. This is a game that I think the Ravens can control. Now, I get it. The Ravens haven't really had postseason success. Them winning these two games alone would be really big for them in general, but I think this might be the year Ravens get back to the Super Bowl. I really like the Ravens run game. Even though the Chiefs' defense is elite, I think they can control the game. I think the Chiefs have been more susceptible to making errors on offense and turning the ball over. I actually have the Ravens winning this game, and I know it's crazy to think Chiefs at home on a three-peat look lose, but I really like the Ravens run game in this one, and I think the Chiefs have been, once again, more error-prone than ever, and I think the Ravens, even though their pass coverage hasn't looked the best, I think we'll be able to control the game enough. I didn't put any scores on any of these, did I? Lions over the Vikings, 33-24. Eagles over the Buccaneers, 30-21. Ravens over the Chiefs in a somewhat low-scoring game of 24-23. And then the Eagles versus the Lions, where I do like the Eagles roster versus Lions. I think the Lions have played ridiculously well, though. I just think there has been openings. I think there's teams that have had openings. Not that I'm saying Green Bay really realistically had a chance in both of the games against the Lions, but I think if a team like Green Bay, I almost said with the injuries, could you imagine? I said, damn, those Packers, they got so many injuries. The Lions are so lucky. But I think Green Bay, with their lack of roster talent, can kind of, give the Lions run for their money, even though they're in their divisional matchups. I think the Eagles, who looked way better as a roster, can definitely do the same. I just don't understand how the Lions are playing so well, especially on defense with the injuries they've got. I really want to go Eagles here. This is one I'm going to have to pause and kind of think a little bit deeper about. And I'm going to give it to the Lions. And the main reason why is I think the Lions are less one-dimensional than the Philadelphia Eagles. I think, though, that the Eagles have a chance to do what they usually do on the ground against Detroit, but if they can't, that is where they're really going to struggle. I really like the receivers' weapons, though. The Eagles' weapons, though. It's kind of tough. It's tough, but I'm going to give it to the Lions versus the Eagles. Probably a high-scoring game, 34-31. I think this is going to be a Lions Super Bowl win, though. I know we're going right into the Super Bowl talking about it. I'm going to say the Lions win it all. I think last year, the Lions probably should have somehow imploded astronomically against the Niners and really should have just won it all then. And I think this year, not that this is their best chance, because once again, all those injuries, which once again, it just scares me to think what they could have been without them. But I think the Lions right now are just playing like the best in the league. They have once again given teams openings, but I think they've just been so consistently good this year that it's hard to bet against them. I think they have a culture thing. I think they have they just have the hunger right now, and I'm going to give it to the Lions. I think any one of these teams could really beat them, the Vikings, especially the Eagles, but I just think the Lions barely pull out the victory against all of them. Kind of a low-scoring game, but I think Lions with their running backs, I think Montgomery's coming back. I think Gibbs, if they don't throw Gibbs to the side, like I wouldn't say they did before, but if they just give him a little bit more carries like they have had to because Montgomery's been out, I think they can kind of ride him in through the playoffs for a Super Bowl win. And I think the Ravens just have a lot of struggles against a guy like Gibbs, even with guys like Roquan on the team. I just like the Lions a little bit better. I think they have a bit, once again, more versatility, more, like what are they going to do? Are they going to throw it? Are they going to run it? Are they going to throw it to the running back? What are they going to do there? As long as Dan gets out of his own way, as long as he doesn't overthink it, there's situations where, a field goal just about wins them the game, whereas going for it gives the other team a chance. And I don't like those fourth down situations. And I know he's like 70% on the year or something on fourth down. And, you look at a game like, once again, I know I'm bringing up the Packers a lot, which I actually use against Packers fans because they're like, oh, well, if you would have kicked the field goal against the Bears, maybe you win the game, or the same thing against the Vikings. But if the Lions did that earlier in the year against Green Bay on one of the 4th and 2s, the Lions split this series with Green Bay, So it is kind of like a give and take. Yes, Dan has won a lot of games probably because of those fourth down decisions, or really pulled away in a game because of that. But at the same time, this is the playoffs now. You got to really think about that. Got to really weigh the options. It's not about just, oh, this is a 70% chance, success rate. It's about what happens when I don't get this fourth down, And I've seen a couple of times this year where, he could have just about virtually putting it away instead of going for it, which literally put it away. And I get it, and that's awesome, and you're taking that chance, but you got to really think about those, I think. And as long as something like that doesn't happen, I have the Lions winning it all, because I just think that they've looked somehow better almost with their injuries. And I don't know how many teams you can say that for. And because of that, I think there's something special going on there in Detroit. As much as a Packers fan, I don't want to admit it. I kind of feel like that's just the way it is. So this is my playoff bracket. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think is wrong? Once again, there's no way that this is 100% correct. I mean, there could easily be the Texans winning. The Packers could pull off an upset. This is the biggest upset in the entire playoffs, in my opinion. If Green Bay wins against Philly, I don't see a single matchup anywhere through the divisional, the championship, Super Bowl that I am more confident about than this Eagles win over the Packers. And I really hope I'm wrong, because obviously I'm a Packers fan, but just all of these matchups, I could see the Texans winning. I could even see the Steelers winning, even though I think this is the second favorite lock. I could see the Broncos even winning. The Rams, the Commanders, Buccaneers over the Eagles, the Vikings over the Lions, Chargers over the Chiefs. I could see it all. But this Packers-Eagles, this is like the most secure one I have. I don't even know what the Vegas odds are. They're probably pretty in favor of Philly right now, but we'll see what happens. Like I said, hopefully I'm wrong. In previous years, I've been pretty confident on Green Bay. I think last year they were one of the hottest teams entering the playoffs. I think they could have won it all. Once again, another team that just fell short against Niners, even though they shouldn't have. 2 drop pick sixes. But this year, I don't see it as much as any other year. And that's where I stand. Lions win it all. Once again, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What do you think I was wrong on? What aspect do you think I'm wrong on? Don't just be like, oh, you're a moron, dude. There's no way the Commanders lose the Buccaneers. There's always one of those fans. And I know there's someone going to be memeing, and they're going to say the exact thing I just said as a meme. I get it. I can understand sarcasm. Trust me. But at least, elaborate on it. I want to hear why. I don't want to be like, oh, you're dumb, dude. Steelers are beating the Ravens. Okay, why? Okay, just tell me why. Why do you think that? Anyone can, I can literally be like, oh, let's clear this. Whatever. Anyone could do that, right? I want to know why. Anyways, forget this. That's just wrong. Regardless, if you guys enjoyed this one, maybe leave a like. Subscribe if you're new. If you're not new, I do appreciate continued support here on the channel. As far as members go, we're probably going to have a Madden predicts the playoffs members only video, maybe later today even, just as an extra for members. Those types of videos don't usually do well on the channel anyways. These don't even do that well on the channel, but that usually does really bad on the channel. So just going to throw that for members only, just as an added bonus, if you will. And we'll have some more videos on the weekend, even with those playoff games. So the only thing I hate about the playoffs is, while it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of football to watch, there's also almost no good time to upload because everyone's watching the playoff games. So it could be a lighter weekend, and maybe everything just gets pushed to Monday or something. But it should be a lot of content between Saturday through Monday, somewhere around that range. Anyways, though, take care of yourselves, and see ya!